Hi, my name is Sant, and I'm an assistant professor of environmental health within the San Diego State University School of Public Health. And I want to talk today about our research assessment of water contamination in the Tijuana River. So a quick background to the Tijuana River. It's a binational watershed that flows from within Tijuana in Baja California up into southern San Diego County, namely the communities of San Ysidro and Imperial Beach, before flowing out into the Pacific Ocean. So under heavy rains, this watershed gets completely flooded on the US side and gets really highly impacted by things like sediment, trash, as well as sewage and chemical contamination. So just the image on the right shows what it typically looks like maybe like 48 hours after a rainfall event. Normally, this watershed, especially during dry conditions in summer months, shouldn't have any flow. So the water that is in there is either due to rain events during rainy season or due to sewage contamination. And the typical cause of this is just due to inadequate infrastructure within the city of Tijuana, which experienced rapid population growth in the late 20th century, but not everybody has adequate access to sanitation infrastructure such as sewers. So why is this important? Those communities in our South Bay region in San Diego are pretty mixed. They're pretty dynamic. There's a ton of recreational areas, military facilities, agricultural lands, commercial shopping districts, but also major residential areas. So our goal of this study is to characterize the microbial contamination within these transborder flows as a way to start evaluating whether or not this water is impacting local public health, and namely communicable disease. So we've been collecting at several transborder sites from 2019 to 2020, and as well as 2020 to 2021. We're going out collecting grab samples of water, and then we were isolating DNA from those samples and using metagenomic sequencing to detect what species were in those samples. So first and foremost, just measuring things like E. coli doesn't necessarily imply that this is composed of human sewage. So we first assessed two human indicators of sewage, HF183 and crAssphage. So in this particular case, when we plotted the concentrations or recounts of each of these, we found that they were very highly correlated. So overall, we feel pretty confident that this is in fact human sewage that's contaminating these samples. Interestingly enough, the location also didn't affect this. So sites that were coastal, like Boca Rio, where the ocean is mixing with the water and diluting it over time, are actually having very similar microbial communities to the rest of the water samples. Likewise, it also told us that the salinity, everything wasn't affecting it, but also, again, just the species between the sites really didn't vary. So it suggests that these microbial species are persisting out all the way to the Pacific Ocean. So currently we're working on correlating these with local communicable diseases. So we have monthly reports from the County for Communicable Diseases, and we're assessing whether or not the amounts of each of the potential viruses, bacteria, and pathogens that we're detecting in our water samples correspond with incidence of the same matched communicable diseases within the county reports. So we're currently undergoing this just to see how well they are correlated. But I think it's important to stress that this doesn't necessarily confirm that these are live bacteria. Just because we measure it, it means the DNA is in the sample. It doesn't mean that they're live and transmissible, but they are indicative of disease in Tijuana specifically. So the reason we're comparing this to monthly reports in San Diego County, for example, is to see whether or not this might be indicative of San Diego disease, or whether or not that some of these may be transmissible and basically contributing to disease within San Diego County as well. But likewise, we're not an isolated community. These transborder water flows, due to inadequate infrastructure, are not special to San Diego and Tijuana specifically. They're similar, for example, about an hour and a half inland in Mexicali and Calexico, where transborder water flows are flowing into the US that are typically considered highly impaired. But also, most of the sampling was done during COVID-19, when more and more people were spending time at home and therefore might have had less access to adequate sanitation. I'd like to thank all of my collaborators, students, and funding sources for supporting this research. And with that, thank you very much for your time.